They're trying to make new things and develop new things and think that once that project is done, they can put it into the game and it's going to last. But it requires maintenance. It requires fuel to keep the wheels turning. What do I think about the current situation with accessories? I mean, the only thing that I don't like about accessories is the Debo grind. I think the Debo grind is a very narrow-minded, uncreative way of thinking, honestly. I think the fact that you're leading people into just going for the Debo accessory grind, having to have minimum 3, and then the only way to click them efficiently is to buy precision hammers. So here's my thought process for BDO's current situation, okay? We have the early game, we have the mid game, the late game, the end game, okay? Now just bear with me while I use my very, very, very high technological software to show you this. In my personal opinion, the early to mid game going into late game is the most fun, is right here, of the current status of the game. I'll explain myself here in a second. In the early game, you have so many different things that you can do in the early game. You're figuring out what you want to do, the life skilling, the grinding, the PV, all that stuff. You're learning about the game, which leads you into the window of the mid game, okay? Early game has got this giant window of so many different things you can do. It's got a creative push through that. And, you know, there's a lot of daunting things and boring things, sure, whatever. But let's just keep it simple for now. As you get into the mid game, you'll notice that your options start to kind of narrow as you start getting into the late game window. At this point, you're working on, like, you know, your TED accessories, your pen armors, going for the pen accessories through the Jatina quest line. You know, your Magnus is already done. You're going to be pushing for your C10 armors. You're going to be working on Fallen God armors. You're going to be working on your Black Stars and things like that. And then once you're in the late game, going to the end game, it is a one-track mind of thinking. It is getting your Tet Debo accessories, and you are grinding precision hammers. And like, that is it. Aside from that, you might be keeping up with the occasional daily quest things. Maybe you're still wrapping up your Pit of Undying and whatnot. But once you are done with, you've got your Fallen Gods, they're at duo, you're in that late game. This is at the 700 gear score era, and you're working towards the 730, towards the 750 area. It is like such an absolutely narrow one-track mind of thinking. And once you're in the end game, pushing like the barrier of hard cap, you have one option. And to me, it's like when you ask me the question of how do I feel about the current state of accessories, I just think it's super narrow-minded. I think the creativity is so lackluster. I want the game to do great and I want the game to continue to be fun, but we're at the part where like the bar needs to be raised. And in this state of endgame, the window of options needs to be much, much broader. I don't mind working on Debo accessories with this one-track mind of thinking, but there needs to be something to push towards. But it's like they're wasting manpower on so many of so much of this content that they're putting into the game. War of Roses hits the game, it got removed as fast as it fucking hit the game. Waste of manpower, waste of money because you're spending money on advertising it, the manpower to build it. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money because it just gets removed from the game. And then on top of that, they're introducing contents or continents that are unfinished. Look at Ulakita or however you call it. They came out with what, 2 spots or whatever, and then said there was going to be a treasure item, which they eventually put in. Said there was going to be the flame, which they eventually put in. Then there was another grind spot that got added to it eventually. And then now it's like the Devil Ring gets added to the game with no added content that gets put into it. It just gets put into 310 grind spots. The content that they're putting in is becoming more and more and more and more lackluster, in my personal opinion. So it's like, if we're going to release a region that does have this planned content for it, do not give it to me until all of it is there. That's what I want. I want to go to a region knowing that I have options to explore and things to push for. But it's like, I don't want to go to a region feeling like it's unfinished, knowing that eventually I'm going to have to start working on an item that's eventually going to come to that grind spot. That's unfinished content. That's lazy development as far as I'm concerned. And I narrow it down to this very, 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 very simple statement. Content in the game equals PA first, player second. This is what the content is starting to become into the game in terms of my opinion. And I really think that's why people are starting to leave the game, why our hardcore PvPers are stopping PvP. I really think that if PA just swapped their focus and did this and went player first, PA would benefit right after. It needs to be player first, PA second. That is the quick summary of how I feel. It needs to be player first, PA second. Because if the player is having a great time, more players come in. If the player is having a good time and more players are coming in, PA benefits off of all of that. But right now, we're just seeing content that's being delivered that's unfinished, unstrategized, or dead on arrival. And they're not putting events or content into the game that gives longevity to that content that does hit the game. Arena of Solare. Why do we not have another season opening up right after the last one? I can understand like a 2-3 week cooldown period, but the season needs to come up right after. Why is Arena of Solare give you no compensation for the time that you put into it? Why does RBF give you no proper compensation for the time that you put into it? It doesn't need to be the best silver in the game, but it needs to reward people for something. The reason why people aren't doing this all the time is because they know that the only way they progress their character is by making that income per hour that everyone is so solely focused on. So give them some sort of compensation for it. The reason why I feel like it's PA first, player second, we could do so many examples. I'm going to do Shadow Arena, for example. Shadow Arena wasn't really honestly that great, but people were super excited to play it. PA saw that it was doing well. They yoinked it from the game. They released it as a standalone. What happened to that standalone? It died. Now, had they just put the money and time and development time into making that content and then put extra time and focus into making sure that content has longevity to it, such as proper moderation, proper events going around it, properly eliminating cheaters and things like that, rather than doing this fucking blanket slap on the wrist shit, it would last longer. Altar of Blood, if they made it randomized rather than scripted content, it would last longer. If they had more reliable rewards or regular events that kept up with it, if they did weekly rewards with it and treated it like a dungeon, anything, it would have a longer lifetime. So for me, it's like, how do I feel about the state of accessories? I'm just very disappointed by it. I'm very disappointed by the lack of creativity because every piece of content they continue to put into this game as of recently is PA first, player second. And I know I'm not talking out my ass here. If they put player first and PA was after that, PA would benefit the whole fucking 9 yards that they would want to be benefiting from. But they're just putting their manpower, as far as I'm concerned, in my perspective, in the wrong departments. They're trying to make new things and develop new things and think that once that project is done, they can put it into the game and it's going to last. But it requires maintenance. It requires fuel to keep the wheels turning. And they're just letting the tank run out and then run on empty and then wondering why the fucking vehicle isn't turning anymore. So for me, it's like, I just think it needs just such a simple adjustment in terms of how they're strategizing that content, how it gets released, how they're strategizing it lasting while after it's released. And I think it would do great. I just really think that this Devo accessory shit is one of the most uncreative, absolutely lackluster content that they've been releasing to date. And me personally, I know not everyone feels the same way, but me personally, I feel like the Devo ring specifically is the most lackluster, uncreative piece of gear that has been added to this game to date. It's number one in my perspective, simply because they added a new accessory. You get it once every fucking 40 to 50 hours on average in spots we were already spending time in. And it's not like it's a bad thing to send us back to these grind spots, but it's just so uncompelling. And now you want to put these precision hammers into the game that people got to save up for, making it the most efficient way to work on these accessories. But here's the other concern. You got to think about the long term. In the long term, when we look at the precision hammers, there's 5,300 precision hammers sitting on the EU market. This is EU right now, okay? I guarantee you all of these will not sell by the time November comes around. November comes around, that's the time that they've said that these are going to get removed from the game. If there's even a small, like a couple thousand sitting on the market, that's a couple thousand of people that never got to reap the benefits from the Jay's Hammer because they weren't going to use it. They wanted to sell it. Those people never got the money that they wanted to get from it. These people are all waiting on these to sell. You are literally looking at a problem about to happen in the midwinter, earlier winter time. The only thing that we know is that this is going to get removed. That's what we've been told. So if that is the case scenario, then it's like, I can't wait to see the fucking Reddit thread on the day that this gets removed. I just see all this content being put into the game that is just PA first, player second, and it just lacks originality. It lacks creativity, and they're putting in content where they're trying to be original, but they're not doing anything to maintain the health of it. I don't have all the answers and solutions, but what I do know is that every little piece of content they're starting to put into the game is PA first, player second. They need to switch that thought process. And here's the thing. It is all about trust. This is just my opinion. I don't say this is factual. I could be dead ass wrong, and I hope I'm dead ass wrong. However, if PA continues to put the content that they're putting into the game, they're losing the trust of players because they're putting in content that is unoriginal, unthought out. It is so fucking half-assed. It is lackluster. They're now having a track record for releasing content that gets removed right after because it dies immediately. It's not being maintained. There's no events that are being strategized that continue the longevity of that content. Everything that I've said before. And long story short, you continue to lose the trust of your player base. So now you're going to continue to release content that less and less and less and less and less people are going to be excited for, because the only thing that they know that they can count on is the track record that you have prior. Is this eventually going to get removed? Is this unfinished content? Is this completely unoriginal? Is this narrow-minded? Like, that is the thing that players are fucking thinking of. Some people don't think of that abroad, but they have those feelings of frustration. So they're going to look at that content and they're just going to question it rather than be excited for it. They're going to like walk on eggshells and have to approach it lightly, or they're going to let other people play it, check it out, because they don't want to touch this shit, because everything they're doing is just fucking becoming disappointing. What do I want? I want better, obviously. I want that to be turned around. I really hope that the Heidel Ball continues to host and offer things that we can be excited about. So that's how I feel about the current state of the accessories. I don't think it's bad for the premium price of these things to go down, because it makes it more obtainable for new players and continue to be more new player and mid-game friendly. But let's be honest, the late game is just fucking boring right now. They don't want people to PvP. They don't want to reward people for practicing and putting in time. They don't want to compensate people for this awesome combat system that they take so much fucking pride in. And you know what I find to be further ridiculous? They have said in the past that the reason why they don't do a global release on some of the content is because of a translation issue. Right? It just takes a little bit of time for this content, especially when new regions come out and all the voice dialogue and all the stuff, to be properly translated. Okay, I can understand that. So why the fuck, when one accessory got added to the game, the Devil Ring, why did Korea get it first? You're not telling me you didn't have one guy in the office that spoke Korean and English and just could translate one item and we all got it on a global scale? Why didn't we all get it at the same time? So it's like we're constantly seeing this shit that's like contradicting statements that we've heard in the past. And again, I go right back to it's PA first, player second. Players should be first, you come after. And I guarantee you, if you just spend some time losing a bit of money, investing in your players, and you receive the return of your investment, if you've done a good job with that placement, I would not be shocked if they're losing money, if they're losing players because of the stuff that they're doing. It is them first, us after. That's how I feel. I don't want the game to die. I don't want to quit playing the game. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing. And the reason why I continue to preach, I would rather just blow up my account and start all over again, is because the early game and the mid game is the most fun. Why? Because of the power creep. You feel your gains. You feel your progress. You know what's next. You know what you're working towards. In the late game, I get the fucking 5-set demo set. I don't feel jack shit because I'm too busy going into cap content that I can never feel this shit. And when I work on this, there's nothing that I can fucking go do. And all I'm trying to do is just make this experience more fun for myself. That's it. I hope for the best. I expect the worst, especially based on the track record. But ultimately, it comes down to a level of trust, and you want your players to trust you. It is what it is. But as far as I'm concerned, based on the content that they're putting in, as quickly as it's getting removed, they're wasting manpower, they're wasting money, they're wasting time. That's how I feel. And of course, I want things to be good with this game.